Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to this deep woo-woo episode tonight entitled The Wacky Woo with my friend JSNIP4. You can find him at JSNIP4 here on YouTube. We're simulcasting here tonight on his channel as well. And of course, you can find him at Realist News, or actually on Patreon here.com at JSNIP4. Joe, welcome back to the show, man.
Why, thank you. I'm just checking mine to make sure mine's going too. Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah, so sorry we're late, folks. We're trying to set up the simulcast with Joe's channel tonight as a test drive, and it seems to be working just fine. So welcome, everyone. We are going to have one of those wacky woo episodes tonight, Sunday, October 3rd. And of course, as luck would have it, things are about to get really, really crazy. If you guys saw the last Clif High episode with Greg Hunter, he said that perhaps even starting as early as October 4th, we would see some weird emotional tension rising. And of course, just today, we saw those Panama Papers make the surface again, or Pandora, actually, papers make the surface again. Before we get in all of that, Joe, how's it going, man?
Good, actually, yeah. Just kind of get my screen set up there, but yeah, stuff's happening, man. I just uploaded a video a few minutes ago, like was just finishing it. It was talking about, and I'm like, oh, well, the World Health Organization is saying it, so I'm allowed to say the word ivermectin in COVID because that's what's in the med kit that they gave people in India. I think you tweeted that too on Zero Hedge. And I go, yeah, I sent that to myself to do a video, so I just had some time to talk about it. But it's like, well, I shouldn't get nailed because I'm quoting the World Health Organization. It's not my fault they used the word medical kit back then, and didn't decide to tell us till recently what was in the med kit.
Mm-hmm.
Something called, I think it was an antibiotic, doxycycline or something, and ivermectin.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yeah, I think I'll upload that video, see what happens, because I'm quoting a authority source. So off, YouTube. Leave me alone, man. I'm following the rules, man. Come on.
We're following the rules. We're sourcing official government data sites, of course. Absolutely. Oh, man, this is getting crazy. There's a lot of things I wish we could talk about here on this episode, but more and more revelations are coming out with that story. And I'm just like, I'm hearing it here in Normie World too. Sarah and I went to dinner with friends yesterday at the restaurant, which are like not asleep, but not awake, And the things that they were saying all of a sudden this week were like, whoa. Like, people just, they're getting it. Like everybody's getting it at a different level. Like some of them are in the deep.
And here's one of the things I said in my video. I just literally just uploaded. I said, okay, every single thing they try to amplify. Trump did this. Oh my God, he should be taken down. 25th Amendment. He accidentally slipped on a piece of water. And then Biden slips 3 times badly up the thing. Like every little thing they tried to throw a dart at Trump.
Yeah.
They've thrown it 10 times harder at Biden to make you go, oh, God, that was worse. So
you mean like the 400 executive orders compared to 12? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's the same thing in Australia, New South Wales. There's some backroom dealing money, and potentially the money had to do with the payoff from the pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Moderna. And like, oh, my gosh. And she's the one pushing the vaccine.
That's conspiracy, Joe. No.
So, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. So if she's one, how many others, right? Yeah. All this is happening. If these people are in control, the bad guys, if they're really in control, this would not be a news story. Her stepping down, no chance of it. Even if she got caught, I'm not stepping down. I got a job to do. I got to keep people safe and make sure you get your vaccine. I'm not leaving. No, she said, I don't want to, but I have to, is what she said. I don't want to, but I'm forced to. I have to.
I'm really curious. Like, I'd love to be a fly in the wall. The 5 minutes before she went out and made that speech. Like, think of the stress and what was really going on in her mind. Oh, man. And the thing is, too, as we're seeing this, I'm assuming we're going to see this over and over and over and over again to a certain point where there's going to be 20 a day of these people resigning and doing the mea culpa or just getting out of the screen. Like, I think we're just on that wave now. Like, this could be the tipping point here.
So if we'll say you're friends, because that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
You were just shocked. Whoa, hey, look at what they're talking about. Cool.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the FDA. Gigantic tweet, made headlines around the world. You're not a horse. You're not a cow. Stop it. Referring to taking ivermectin. A dewormer. We have a virus thing here. Why are you taking, stop. Just stop it, as they say. So Everybody who's a normie, let's say, saw that. My wife even had somebody in a Facebook group she was in about this stuff. Oh my God, why did you take horse medicine? She goes, well, I contacted a human doctor and he gave me a human thing, whatever, ivermectin. Not for horses. It's a human drug too. They didn't even know this was ever for humans.
Mm-hmm.
Much less it's been around for decades for humans, by the way.
Right. And tested with very little to no side effects. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So I'm that person, the person who messes my wife, your friends, other friends of ours, right? And I remember that FDA story, boy. And I remember messaging Evelyn, why are you taking horse paste? What? And now I just heard the World Health Organization were giving out ivermectin through medical kits. They refused to say what it was at the time back in May. Mm-hmm. And we've been dealing with this thing for months now. And they had a 99% cases dropped of COVID cases in India, in this particular province or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Imagine that. What are the odds of that, though?
Yeah, a few weeks. So, again, I happen to hear this all of a sudden now because now it's a mainstream media. MSN had to even report on it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go, horse paste? They were giving out the horse. Well, what the hell? And now I'm going to go find out, well, what is ivermectin? I'm actually going to finally do the research. What the hell is this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been around for decades. It's been, oh, wow. So, again, a seed was planted in someone's brain. It has now blossomed into a little seedling or sapling, if you will, if it's a tree.
Yep.
And you go out to dinner with your friend, and all of a sudden there's little trees growing. Hey, man, what's going on?
What's going on?
So this is a mastermind operation to take one thing that all the leftists, all the normies pounce on it. They like a tiger. And then all of a sudden, just a little bit of time goes by. Yeah, we hear you guys. Yeah. And then bang!
The walk of shame.
And mainstream's reporting it. Politico, remember that one? Politico's reporting this thing about Hunter Biden's. The laptop stuff is real. The emails are real. Oh my God.
Right.
But wait a minute.
Joe, I need to interrupt you, man.
Yeah.
This is the Wacky Woo, and it's Sunday, and I thought maybe something really, really wacky would happen, and of course we have somebody else in the live stream studio right now. Yeah. What's on the Magic 8 Ball?
Wacky Woo. Is this special guest Clif High?
I don't know. Should I check? Hold on a second here.
Without a doubt.
Show me the
I don't know if I can. Hold on. Oh, here we go. See if you can see that. The light's right on it. I'm trying to move it.
Without a doubt. I see it. Well, there you go, folks.
See? It's official. It has to be here.
Let me bring him up on the screen. Mr. Clif High. Where did he go? He's not there. There he is.
I'm down here. Hang on.
Clif, how's it going, man?
Well, I was doing fine until that.
Oh my God, thank you so much for joining us, Clif. And folks, if you want to follow Clif's work, you can find him at bitchute.com/Clif_High. You can also find him on Twitter at Clif High. Clif, thank you so much for being on. I know you're extremely busy and you've been pumping out amazing material here, man, all year, but recently in the last couple of months, you've just been on a tear. And I wanted to share with the audience also the last interview you just did with a Greg Hunter. And perhaps we can start there. When you were last on this show, I asked you to talk about devolution and the overrule. We won't repeat that here today. But in your last interview with Craig, you got into the concept here of the breakdown woo. Can you spend maybe 2-3 minutes here to explain to the audience what you mean by the breakdown woo and where we are situated right now in that data?
Well, we're breaking down everywhere. Okay, so just like Joe was saying, it's a mental breakdown on all of these little different levels, no matter where you happen to have your interest fixed. So basically, at a high level thing, it's all human attention market. And in order to disrupt the normies and get devolution really marching along in the form of a counterinsurgency, all the normies need to be disrupted, but the only way to disrupt the normies is by their area of interest. So as Joe was saying, there's those people that are fixated on this particular thing, and you get that little ivermectin worm in there, and you've destroyed their paradigm and all of that, and so they get disrupted, right? There's other people that are fixated on the economics, and so now I see there's this kid out there with this new song that's going viral about what shitty economy it is.
The rap kid?
The rap kid, yeah. Yeah, he's good too, you know. I mean, really, not only musically, but linguistically, it was just really well done and well timed. So, you know, we're really recreating a lot of the old things that they used to see in ancient Rome all the way through the Byzantine Empire, which was the reliance on rhetoric and oratory, and that if you were a good orator, you could, you know, woo the crowd and end up a senator, that sort of thing, right?
Right.
And so here we are, but we're doing it with these kids, and very, very, very talented. And you know, there's the new McDonald's song out. I haven't seen that yet. But yeah, so that's breaking down in all of these different facets, and it depends on where you fix your attention. So it's really a bitch. It's not like we all have a mono focus that you can zero in on and disrupt, and then everybody's done. It's got to do all of this stuff, and we're in the midst of it. I mean, I know this personally. We've got near relatives attempting to get into the hospital. Okay, so there's a giant breakdown here. Turns out that if you get the treatments, you end up with the potential for cancer to grow very, 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 very rapidly if you have it in you already. So the situation is that older people around my age or older, younger by maybe even 20 years, so 40s and above, who happen to have cancer conditions don't know this. They receive these treatments, and it causes the cancer to blossom. The oncologists are saying that they're seeing 5 and 6 months worth of growth in like barely a month. And so and here's the problem. We know this from personal experience that, I mean, within our larger family and circle of friends, because I don't want to get into personal health issues with individuals, but it's growing, the cancers are growing so rapidly and metastasizing so rapidly that there's no hope for chemo for the injected individuals, right? The chemo is, or some of these people, they do 3 and 4 rounds within mere weeks, you know, really compressing the chemo. And they can't do MRIs. They can't do magnetic imaging. They can't do anything that involves magnetics. So these people that have the cancer show up to get the cancer diagnosis, have all of these impediments into them now because of the situation with the, you know, the structured paradigm and all of that. Plus now the hospitals are all clogged up by, so we have a person that needs to get in for surgery for cancer because the chemo is just not going to happen, right? It's not going to work. And there was no hope for that anyway. Chemotherapy is just bogus in the beginning. Most doctors won't take it. An astonishing, like 90% of doctors that get cancer diagnoses refuse chemo. But in any event, there were like 5 people ahead of this one individual that I'm referencing here to get a bed. And yet this was an urgent situation, according to the oncologist. He was pulling all the strings he could. The insurance company cooperates and all of that. Doesn't make any difference because there's so many people with blood clot issues. And the hospitals are just not acknowledging that. I mean, they do when you're there in their face, but they refuse to use that language.
Frustrating time indeed. Yeah, sorry, I was muting myself here. There's a little bit of an echo. Frustrating times indeed, and my heart goes out to everyone here who's caught and who has these family members and friends who need medical care right now and who are perhaps damaged by all of this. And it seems that we're seeing more and more of that every day. And I was just telling Joe before we went live too that my friends who I went out to dinner last night, they also have relatives right now, and this is starting to percolate in their mind that perhaps this was actually by design. So they weren't all the way deep into the woo side of the pool yet, but they're getting there very, very quick, Cliff. So Sarah and I were looking at each other like, at what point does this get ugly when these people realize really, really what's going on here?
That's the terrible part. It's crushing when it does. When you're there and it starts filtering in through their mind, it is a moment of horror for anybody that's aware enough to understand what's going on with them, with the patients here. So, but yeah, it's terrible. And the denial, the absolute denial in the quote medical profession and institutions is beyond understanding. You know, the doctors will tell you, they'll stand there right there and tell you, no, masks don't make any difference at all. But then they put them on and walk around in the whole thing, right? And so but the denial just goes, no, we won't have ivermectin in this institution. But they have ivermectin under another name. And they're giving ivermectin to injected people. And that's one of their part of their protocols now is to try that early to see if that helps. So it does in some individuals. It really depends on the nature of the damage. You know, it's just a horrific time, guys. I'm a little down as a result of this. We've been dealing with this for a couple of weeks now for a lot of individuals, and it's not like it's just us. It would actually, as terrible as it is, it would be great if it was just us and we were isolated. But I get hundreds of emails now from people saying, basically, what do I do, you know, for myself or someone else? And it's getting really, it's getting into the ugly phase.
Absolutely.
Now, Cliff, you mentioned, I don't know if you want to get into this or how you were structuring this, JC, but one of the things Cliff had tweeted, I think, or maybe even mentioned in a video, was like, it was something like, you know, October 1st or like middle of October, by November, like your normie friends will be here, but then by November they'll be like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we're gonna, well, we've already started to see it. I don't know how much of it will blossom, but today the Pandora box was opened. Okay, so there's a lot of things that are going to happen over October that are deliberate. They're there to disrupt this attention span, this attention market. So if you're paying attention to economics, you're going to get disrupted really quick as the as the Chinese bonds go down and the U.S. Economy goes down. And then if you're paying attention to politics, there's going to be weird arrests and stuff going on. So it's just going to be flowing all over. And like some of these things are quite deliberate. And so it was from the 4th until the 10th is this like bulge in intensity. And all of a sudden today, out comes this Pandora's box thing, right? Which is this, the economic listings of all of these billionaires and all these people, how they've got their offshore funds, where the money is, and so on. This is pertinent because there's a lot of people. Oh no, Joe's gone. This is, you know, now you're back. Okay. Anyway, this is pertinent because the original Panama Papers was thought by many people, including myself, to be part of the SOC, to be part of devolution way the hell back when. Because they had to lay a trail that takes years to absorb. So a lot of this nasty information that comes on out has to be dribbled out because it takes you a while to absorb it and find out that it's factual and prove to yourself that it's just this way. So now we've got the Panama Papers and we've got Pandora's box, and this is a huge reveal on all the economic machinations of these people. And so now tomorrow, I don't know what's going to be happening here, but over the 4th through the 10th, I suspect we're going to get a pretty big emotional pump that's going to hit the normies. And so so I talked to these people, and some of them are like dedicated normies. And I mean, like seriously, it's a religion.
Dedicated normies.
Right, exactly. They're fighting tooth and nail the whole way, guy. And you know, it's terrible because I feel bad for them. You know, I don't really want to hurt them or anything, but I'm disruptive to their normie land, and just being in their presence I'm disruptive just because of the way I talk about this stuff and so on. But the normies are going to have this huge breakdown, this mental breakdown, and the injected ones, I think there's going to be a lot of those going crazy, absolutely crazy, like legitimate, you know, throw a net on them and wrap them up in a suit real quick, you know.
Mhm.
Well, that sounds like
Go ahead, Joe.
they are finding out what's in the shot, or they're coming to terms with it. Like there must be some news that comes out of it, not just you and me talking.
I think so, because and also there's going to be other breakdowns in the Normie Land stuff. So there need not be a huge amount of news or officialdom saying anything about the ingredients in the injection, but you could have that total narrative break down, which it already is breaking down from other ways. But as it is eroded from the other aspects of it, then it keeps chipping away at the narrative, like who trusts Fauci anymore, right? And so now everybody is basically hesitant about that, and now they're really having to double down on this. Soon their own language will betray them, and they'll never have to say a factual thing about the ingredients, right? That you'll just get to the point where you realize, oh my God, these people are lying to us. And I don't know about what specifically, but I finally tumbled onto it that little garden gnome is a lying motherfucker.
Well, did you see the recent video where he was being interviewed by some? I didn't recognize who this was, but if Fauci's there, it must have been somewhat of a big person to interview him. And he's like, well, the CDC can't be trusted, not Fauci, but the interviewer. CDC can't be trusted because of the FDA can't be trusted anymore because of the. And then he goes, and then you, Mr. Fauci, you said masks were nothing, shouldn't worry about them in the beginning, but then you said we had to wear them. You flip-flopped, like a bunch of stuff. And then he's like, at what point, is there a point soon where you Dr. Fauci, are going to be like, maybe I should resign and step down? And he's like, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. So, I just saw the video today, and I'm going, so he somehow these two people were linked together. Fauci came on. Yeah. And this guy got to say everything he said without Fauci, like, oh, I'm out of here, and took it, and then just was like, no, I'm not going to resign. So, again, who set that up?
Yeah.
That's for the normies. That was for the normies to see this.
Yeah. That's like a directed, scripted kind of a thing there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too cute to be cute in politics, for sure. When you see that happen, you're like, okay, come on, guys. In French, we say, c'est arrangé avec le gars des vues. It's movie magic, basically.
I thought you say it's Gibronnet.
Yes. Okay, folks. Cliff, I want you to talk about one concept here as we just maybe finish the first segment of the show. You had mentioned to me, and also in previous interviews, that perhaps for the first time in history, we as humanity here would be engaged in a war, win the war, and then only after winning the war would we suffer the consequences. Can you explain a little bit, and again, watch the language here for the censored show here on YouTube, what you mean by that?
Sure. So the Third World War was Reagan versus the economic system of the Soviet Union. And America, via Reagan's initiative, wins that war, and we become the superpower. The fourth, that was World War III. And it was all subterfuge, all deception, all economic. No one really knew what was going on. There was fighting and dying in Afghanistan and peripheral areas that was part of it, but it was not an engaged war as far as the normies were concerned. Now we're in a war that the powers that be wanted to have kept secret from the normies. Okay, they wanted that status quo of the normies not knowing what's going on while all this happens. But that war is, as the powers that be said, so like the World Economic Forum and all these kind of people, as early as, or as recent as 9 years ago, were discussing the Fourth World War would be the populace against the ruling class. And so all of their stuff is from the ruling class viewpoint. So we're engaged in that war now, and we win by the mere acknowledgement that that war is ongoing in the minds of the normies, because that changes their behavior, changes everything, all the dynamics that the powers that be, the deep state, requires to prosecute that war, to continue that war. So if it can be elevated to the point where the normies grasp that there are these evil people, they're capable of doing this, they've been doing this, it's ongoing now, you're the victim, et cetera, that in fact, and lead them all up to the point where, look, it is actually a war, and they've been telling you they want to do this to you, and then they get that, their behavior will start to change, and then they're no longer a participatory victim in this. Because, okay, so the guys at the top are psychopaths surrounded by sociopaths. In both cases, the psychopaths don't require it, but they would like to have it. But sociopaths, which is the muscle for the psychopaths at the top, they require willing victims. So they require your participation in your own victimhood. This goes down to the root of them having to tell you ahead of time, kind of crud, right? What evil plots they're going to be doing. So that all we have to do is to get the normies to wake up to the point where they don't participate in their own victimhood anymore, and the whole narrative collapses. So as an instance, Catherine Austin Fitts said that she knows a way to bring them to their knees in a single period of time. It might be a day, it might be a week, but it's going to be very, very short. And that all we have to do is get 30% of the population to turn off their cell phone and leave it at home and don't use it anymore. Okay, and that breaks off all of this conditioning, that breaks their power, all of the stuff they use, because they're trying to use those cell phones to control you through all of the apps and the barcodes and all of this kind of stuff. If 30% of the population does not participate, the other 70% also has to not participate because the network has broken down to the point where it's useless for one guy in a restaurant to be using the barcode thing to try and get people in and out, right? Makes sense. And then also another thing about the cell phones is that if you get someone to do this on your behalf, like scan a barcode and stuff for you, all of it registers on their ID and not on you. And you get the pass on it, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. And another thing about this is I'm hearing bribery works great. That there's a lot of these restaurants now that you just go on in and say, they ask for your passport and you bring out some cash. And here's my passport. You know, and that maitre d', he seats you right away.
Wow, that's fascinating. The lawyer Rocco Galati was saying that the statistics here in Ontario, in our province, the day they instituted those paperwork requirements, most businesses, including restaurants and hotels, dropped traffic by 50%. So that wasn't just from the people who don't believe in this, but also people who had gotten the treatment before. So there's a huge pushback. And again, we were at the restaurant this Saturday night. I was like, where is everybody? It was like very, very empty. Of course, we were outside in the segregated area, you know. It's like we're living segregation here. Okay, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, Cliff. I think that brings us up to speed here on all of your latest videos. Of course, Joe and I were interested in having this conversation with you tonight to maybe go back to go forward. So in that we meant Joe and I had been very, how do I say, extreme students of your WebBot data, the Alta reports, and also the Bare Naked Wealth. And we found quite a few temporal markers in there that were of interest to us. And we wanted to kind of have this conversation with you to see where perhaps those sit today and if they're still valid or not. And if they are, where do you see them moving out here in the next couple of months? Because a lot of people on the show are worried about what's happening. This is perhaps the biggest question I get on my show. JC, ask Janine, ask this, ask the remote viewer guys, what's going to happen next week? We're all kind of like trying to pull teeth here to try to figure out what the hell's happening in our world. So folks, before we start, so Joe, you had sent me at least 5 questions for Cliff tonight. Let me let you start maybe with your first question. And while you do that, I'm also going to direct the audience here to all of those Alta reports and Bare Naked Wealth reports. I have them now in zip file. Cliff sent them to me yesterday so that you guys can download those for free on the website and follow along with us, and perhaps also include that in your repertoire of study here as you try to empower yourself with what's happening on this planet. So Joe, let's start with your first question.
All right, let me pull that up real quick. So I first thing, actually the first one, Cliff, you remember, I don't know the name of this individual or this thing. It was like Uncle Cousin or Uncle's, remember that one? Uncle something?
Sure.
What was that?
You mean Cousin Alexi?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Is that out of the loop now, or is there anything with that these days?
I would have to have nuance in order to get that, because remember now, all of that came from Eastern European languages, right? And my system now with the censorship, trying to get through the the bottlenecks to get into Russia and stuff. I've got people living in Russia now that are attempting to hook me up at a deeper level to some of this, and maybe I can get back on it. But no, Cousin Alexei was quite fascinating and may well indeed be very viable, because now we're getting into that tumultuous period where you can imagine that there might be some kind of kinetic ground action that would disrupt a secret facility and let Cousin Alexei free. But, you know, as far as the descriptors, it looked like it was an alien. You're muted.
Yeah, I was going to say, explain to the audience who perhaps or what Cousin Alexei is, because a lot of people here are here for the woo. So get into the details here.
Okay, so Cousin Alexei was language that came out over maybe 2 years. It leaked in there for a long time. It took 2 years or so to build up, and it was coming through from Russian and the small variant of Ukraine primarily, although it leaked out into other languages as well. But the idea was that there would be some kind of a disruption, riots or something that would cause damage to a building that didn't look like it was a prison, but it was a prison for this being that wasn't necessarily quite human. And so we get the impression from the data that he was like, had fallen to earth in Russia, and they didn't know what to do with him. And after a while, stuck him in this little facility that later on happens to be damaged in this street action. And he goes off wandering on his own for whatever purposes, presumably to get back to his mission or whatever, right? So it was like, it was years in advance of that storyline, okay? Absolutely years in advance of that storyline. And it was all coming through in the Russian language, but it was sort of like Paul, the movie Paul, right? Because Cousin Alexei was described, no, he didn't do any of that we know of, but he was described as being, congenial, smallish, and yeah, exactly. And not necessarily off-putting, but also not necessarily quite human, visibly not quite human. So I always wondered, if we were ever going to learn this and ever going to see this. And so this is also like the those two guys that stole the whatever it was from Area 51 and went walkabout, right? And so I had some contact with a guy who had an official government passport, a couple of them, right? And he was both gray and brown in his passports. So he had some real serious clearances. And he told me flat out that, I know about those guys and they got caught. And he said, I don't know what happened to them after they got caught, but they were caught in Africa. So, but this was perhaps 2 or 3 years after that. And I was not in a position to ask him about Cousin Alexei, but I bet you he would know.
Wow, that's fascinating. Joe, maybe skip to the fourth question. It ties into this a little bit here about facilities maybe breaking into. Ask Clif the question about the Vatican and what perhaps you might find there.
Yeah, so the Vatican getting looted, you had big data on that, guards fighting protesters, they want food or something. And the thing is, like I'm when he asked me to come up with like 5 things, I go, I don't know where the hell Cousin Alexei thing came from, but I'm like, I got to ask about it for some reason. So maybe we are getting close to that. But I thought, well, we're having, whether these are real or manufactured shortages, doesn't matter. If that happens and people are looking for food, I can see a massive setup right now for the Vatican thing getting looted.
Also, they just have got the Swiss guards deciding they're starting to resign because they don't want to get injected. And so 3 of them went today. I hear there's another 30, and they're not that large of a little army, but I hear there's another 30 that are considering this. So yeah, so you're quite right. And then there's also something really curious. And I just happened to have this guy tell me, and he sent me some photos, but there is a back wall to the Vatican on the lower, it would be the lower southeast side of the Vatican complex that's in the process of being repaired. So there was apparently a car or a truck that smashed it and they had to work on it. So it's got a hole in it at the moment and it's got covered with chain link fence and stuff. So I can see that would be a spot that this could occur. Now that would be the loot coming out of that would just be fantastic. It's going to be the equivalent or more perhaps than the stuff that'll come out of Maryland and Delaware when we get our food riots and stuff happening here. And sure enough, we're going to have those food riots. Now it's baked in the cake, especially in a lot of these cities. We've got all these trucks here. So there's maybe 2 or 3 major semi-truck repair places along the I-5 corridor here in North Puget Sound. And they've got trucks stacked up there where they can't fit any more in. They've got these narrow little slices between all of the parked trucks to get their equipment to move in new trucks for repairs. And they're just sitting there waiting on parts. One of the key parts that the one guy is telling me is holding up a lot of the trucks he's got in his yard. He's down south on I-5, down past in Lewis County. And one of the problems he's got are these linkages, because apparently this particular linkage gets the crap beat out of it with these trucks. And they have to repair them quite frequently, unlike the drive linkages on your car, right? Anyway, and he says he's been promised that they'll ship next March. And he says, I'm not holding my breath. And so, he won't have any new parts for this until next March. And so I asked him, are they just going to sit there, the trucks, I mean? And he says, yeah, there's nothing else we can do.
I just got a newsletter from Chrysler last week, and they're saying, we want your vehicle. They're scrounging everywhere for used vehicles and paying top dollar. Is this connected to perhaps a campaign to refabricate or to collect old car parts here to address that nature?
Yeah, it's a campaign driven by economics. So my wife's not in a position to drive anymore. Her car had sat for a while. It was like a 2005 Lexus, right? And the battery had gone dead here because of the salt air and so on. And so we just decided that we would get rid of this car since she wasn't driving it. It was just sitting around. And so I looked into what it would take to repair it, and it would take, the guy checked it out for me and so on, and it would take 2 of these 3 boards that are in there, 2 control boards, in order to get this car working again. And he didn't know which of the 3. He knew 2 of them were bad, but he didn't know out of the 3 which 2 it was, right? So he said the safest thing to do would be to try to get 1 of each of them, and then you're covered. And so the cost on it was quite fantastic. But even so, it was like one of the boards was $200 or $300 a couple of years ago. It's a little tiny thing, and now it's $1,200. Another one of these boards was $2,000 or something a few years ago, and now it's $8,000. Anyway, though, so the upshot of all of this is that we decided not to mess with it. It wasn't worth it for this vehicle for us, but the guy was just desperate to get his hands on it so that he could strip all of the useful parts out of this Lexus for other Lexus vehicles that he's repairing. And so, there would be no electronics that he could have used out of this, but there was all the other stuff. And so they go into, we're starting to recover. I mean, in my youth, when I repaired vehicles, I went to wrecking yards to pick parts. I didn't go to a parts store until I was quite advanced in age, maybe in my late 20s, because wrecking yards, you just go and buy a used part, haul it out of the old vehicle and put it in, and off you go. It was just the nature of cars back then that you could do this, far less electronics, really. Now we're in the situation, though, where we've got to get the parts because we're not getting them in shipments from overseas.
And how does that tie in also to an older WebBot data set where you were talking about this character that would show up? I believe you called her Demolition Dana. How does that set up also in the same context here of these shortages that we have now?
After the turn, kids like Demolition Dana are put to work. So it might be a couple of years before we see her showing up. It might be next year. I don't know how fast things will happen once we get this emotional turn. Could happen very rapidly, surprisingly so. But Demolition Dana was this tough nut 20-something woman that, is going to be running a demolition crew and running heavy equipment, all of this kind of stuff. demolishing shopping malls and other buildings that are no longer economically viable. So think about it here too. Okay, so we're going to be we're hitting in Europe now, especially in England, we're hitting these energy crises. Well, pretty soon, if you don't have the appropriate form of energy, you're not going there. In other words, we may have an energy crisis and it becomes impossible to pump gasoline where you're at. And so if you have a diesel vehicle, you're okay. Or if you have an electric vehicle, you're okay. Or vice versa and so on, right? But it'll really depend on what's going to happen for the greater economy as to how you're able to move around. And so we're going to have these this need, just like with the parts for the cars, to recover materials because we won't be shipping them cheaply from China, from across the planet. We won't be getting copper wire for buildings from there. So we're going to have to recover copper wire. And we're going to have to set up whole industries to do it. Everything from pulling it out of the shopping mall to putting it into grade to checking it for surety to checking the insulation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the stuff you don't have to do with new materials. So it's an entirely different form of life. But the just-in-time supply system that started in 1952 with Peter Drucker over in Japan has died. And basically you guys more than me, have lived all your life with it, and it'll never be coming back. So we have to make some severe adjustments. I really want to have a giant foot to go out and kick all of the normies in the ass and point them out all of these things that are happening so that we can get progressing a lot more rapidly, right?
We can hit the ground running as we realize the severity of our situation. Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's part of why we're trying to do this show here on YouTube, folks. Of course, we're going to watch our language, but we're trying to get as many normies as possible to get onto this topic and research for themselves. Joe, do you want to set up next maybe the idea of the coastal event? Why don't we go there next? Because I'll tie in La Palma with that as well.
Yeah, so we have the earth or volcano going off now, and it's still going, and they're saying, there might be worse coming, there might not be, it's 50-50, whatever. But again, if that thing drops a chunk off in the ocean, there's your global coastal event. So my main question would be, have you looked at the global coastal event data? Have you reran stuff? Does it still exist? Do you think it's gone?
So the global coastal event was one of those issues of data masking. Okay, it was actually 3 different events. When I ran a reconciliation on it years ago, it reconciled down to Fukushima. Okay, was the main #1 event because that impacted all of the coast by polluting the water. At the same time that was going on March 11th, that particular week and that particular day, we have a series of other small temporal markers that were all combined on all of these different coasts. And since then, we went through that period of time where all of the waters would withdraw from all of the bays and all this kind of stuff, really spookily, that kind of thing. So all of those descriptors all those small temporal markers have actually turned out. Now there are the remaining temporal markers of that set that were into the global coastal event of the tsunami part of it. Okay, so that part of it is still, like La Palma, hanging out there. But there's also something else to recognize here, and that is that we've got a really weird situation going on our planet right now under our feet. Not just La Palma. There's major earthquakes and volcanoes going off in Central America, cracking the volcanoes in half and spewing lava on both sides, and gas eruptions. In a way that hasn't been seen in this area before. These gas eruptions are weird because they form the plasma lightning as the ionized gas boils out of the lava. Anyway, and then we've got this weirdness happening in Australia, geologically. And that is that Australia is having earthquakes. Now, this can't happen, okay? Because technically, you can't have an earthquake on a single plate that's isolated. And Australia is the pinnacle. It's the top of a giant mountain that is on its own plate. It used to be connected a long time ago to India, and it was the Australia-India plate at that point. But now it's just Australia on that single plate. So that where is the earthquake potential coming from, where supposedly the tectonic plates are all rubbing with each other that causes the stuff underneath our feet to move that we then feel as an earthquake? But yet the parts of Australia are moving and causing issues, but they're not moving the way that we have earthquakes here in like California or the US, where the buildings sway and there's this rumble and all these different kinds of things. What's happening appears to be a sudden burst of energy. Okay, so now woo-woo side of this is that I've been expecting an expansion event. All right, and so a potential expansion event would be the cracking of the Australian plate. Giant. Now that would cause the kind of tsunamis and stuff over on the Pacific Ocean that would infill the temporal markers for the global coastal event, because La Palma is not going to be global. All right, it's going to have an impact in the Atlantic Ocean and in the North Ocean, ultimately in the Arctic and down into the South Atlantic, but it'll fade long before it gets down to even the just past the Amazon. It'll start fading because of the deepness of the Atlantic Ocean there. So no, it's not going to cause any problems in the Pacific or any of those kind of things. Plus, it takes a long time for this sort of stuff to move through the water. However, I can envision that we're in an expansion event now based on what's going on with the sun and stuff. And so the expansion event would happen by a confluence of La Palma to Central America to Antarctica, and it would be an absorption of all of this energy in the core of the planet and the expansion of the Earth that would crack open Central America, crack open La Palma, and crack open Australia. Now, whether Australia would actually separate, highly unlikely, but it might crack into at least two distinct plates. And we've had two of these never had happened before earthquake events happen in Australia. And the people there have never had earthquakes, but they know of earthquakes in the other parts of the world. But just being normies, they just accepted that it was okay for Australia to have earthquakes. I was really freaked out.
Yeah, and is this expansion event related anyhow to some of the wordings from old Webbot reports where you were talking about these strange energies from space and maybe this affecting also all the tectonic plate activities here on the planet?
Yeah, and look at all the tons of earthquakes we've had in Antarctica. So before La Palma before it started becoming agitated, we had, I don't know, some outrageous number. I lost track when it was like 1,500, but it may have gotten to 5,000 earthquakes of 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 magnitude in Antarctica in these little clusters. And that was like over the course of, say, how soon we forget, maybe May or June, right? And we started getting into this bubble of earthquakes in Antarctica. And then shortly thereafter, we get this activity at La Palma, seemingly not connected close enough to be connected, right? However, if we're on a large ball that has a small central ball of plasma that is absorbing these cosmic rays and energies from space that have been causing all the wonkiness in the atmosphere and so on, when it expands, we expand and the planet cracks along the points of least resistance, right? Those places that are easier to crack are going to show up this way. And this is usually along the bottom of the ocean because that's where it's thinnest. If you go and check things, if you go and look at the age of rocks and stuff in the continents, it's X billion years old. If you go and look at the age of rocks at the very bottom of the ocean, at the deepest parts of the ocean, it's 600 million years old. So the bottom of the ocean is continually opening up and new material coming on out as the planet expands. There are no subduction zones. That's a myth. Okay, that's a misunderstanding of the evidence because the planet has been more than one size. It keeps growing. And so I think because of the solidity of and the shape of the Australia-Indonesian part of the continent, because Australia and Indonesia used to be one big landmass when the water was lower. And you could walk all the way down Indonesia and get into Australia and back. I think we're going to separate Australia from the Indonesian part of that plate and may even crack the Australian plate.
Wow.
as hopefully that would actually be the best of all the possibilities, because that way La Palma keeps erupting, but it doesn't explode. And the volcanoes in Central America keep erupting and they don't explode, but the pressure is released on the planet over in Australia.
Okay, so talking about releasing pressure here, these galactic superwaves, as Dr. Paul Laviolette had called them, you talked about strange energies from space. Let me ask you a supplemental question on that. But before I do, for the audience members who are worried about what could happen with La Palma as a result of maybe a tsunami, please do go check out this video that Clif produced. It's called Wave Woo, and it'll explain to you quite a bit of science there behind how these waves are created and how far and how high they can go. Now, Clif, going back to this idea of strange energies from space also coming in from your WebBot data, it's not just the planet that's going to be affected by this. Us as humans are also affected through the vagus nerve system. Can we dive into that a little bit here? So, because a lot of people are wondering why they're so jittery. They're thinking, oh, maybe it's because I'm watching the news, maybe I'm drinking too much coffee, but they don't understand that there's a bigger picture involved. Can we dive into that a little bit there for them?
Yeah, I mean, I love these statistics where they say that, if you were to take out all of the nerves in the human body and stretch them all out end to end, it would be able to go from Alaska to Florida, right? And from a single human. You have so many nerve fibers in there. And then we've got these things that the Hindus call nadi, which is where all these nerves join to form the bigger clusters. And we got 78,000 of those things. And so these are the little joins in a Yagi antenna. So, the old TV antennas would have the aluminum things come and join up in connections. And those are like our nerve fibers. And we're just picking up this stuff from space. They don't have enough discrimination on UV to be able to pick it up adequately, but they know something's going on with UV because the rates are up so high. And the suggestion is that we've actually got this new form of UV radiation. The very far end is discriminating and vibrating higher. So where I live, it should be in my latitude in the middle of the day, this time of year, I should get a 7.8 to 7.9 aggregated UVA-B, and I should never ever have UVC here. We've actually had UVC hit the water off of the coast out here, north of me by about 200 miles. Never happened in my lifetime until just a couple of years ago. And then now I'm getting pretty consistently 13 readings, 13, 14, 15, even had as high as 17 UV. That's the kind of UV rays where up here, if I'm driving around in my vehicle and I've got my window rolled down, I will burn on any exposed flesh here in the course of just driving a half an hour to, or an hour to go get groceries, that sort of thing. Really intense UV. So,
is that why boat makers are also trying to reposition maybe the metals in their construction?
Yeah, especially in like areas in Florida. I happen to know a kid that got into this material. It's a thermoplastic. It's a thermal resistant plastic. And he's making a fortune because he did up until China started, up until the shortages. But he was making a fortune going around and refitting boats with basically insulation for all of that nice stainless steel that's exposed in all of the yacht yards there in Florida, right? Because it gets so hot, people are burning themselves on that stuff. And they were starting to expand into thin little insulated mats of this same thermoplastic to put on the decking, because I guess the decking is getting so hot you can't walk around in like bare feet.
Wow. Incredible. Go back, Clif, before we finish on this topic, on the vagus nerve system and perhaps how people can empower themselves to adjust and roll with the punches here as they're being faced with higher and higher energy charges going through their bodies and their nervous system.
Yeah. Part of the problem is we have two energy systems, right? You got the adrenal system and then the vagus nervous system. So the vagus nervous system connects to all of the major organs, connects to all of the glands in the head, connects to all of the major glands in the body. It does not connect to the lymph glands. So I'm talking about the pineal gland and the thyroid gland. These kind of things are connected to the vagus nervous system, but it does not connect to the adrenal gland and its subunits. But it does connect to the pancreas. So you have the adrenal gland capable of pumping out adrenaline, all the endorphins to power you up and get you moving, but those all degrade your body in terms of energy. So they bring in destruction of the nervous tissue, actually, if you get too much adrenaline and keep it up too long. So you basically need your vagus system to be pumping up the energy to get you moving and so forth. But our vagus nervous system and our adrenal system are both being impacted by the strange energies from space. Problem is, the adrenal system just loves it and wants to just get going and wiring you all up, and it's doing cortisol too. So it's picking up these strange energies and kicking out stress hormone, not epinephrine, not dopamine, right? It's triggering cortisol and stress hormone production, which gets you all amped up and ready to fight, but it has that debilitating effect on your nerves as it wears off. And that's what people are feeling. I stopped drinking coffee, got me that bad. And I love this stuff. I was a coffee addict for most of my life, and I can't handle it anymore. So you have to adjust to basically to what's going on here. The vagus nervous system is picking up these energies, but it's not getting, it's so complex and so finely tuned, it's not getting the nitrous in the air blower kind of effect that your adrenal gland is getting from these energies. So you can get quivery, so to speak, where you have a certain amount of energy vibration in your vagus nervous system that is so intense that it actually leaves you weak. I can't describe it very, very well.
Wow.
But a lot of people are reacting to it, and so you have to adjust your diet, have to adjust your exposure to it. So you can do grounding, get a more iron-rich diet so that you're not anemic, because iron in the form of ferritin in your system forms an interconnection electrical process for grounding, for allowing the charge to flow through you. And basically that's what you have to do. Now, it is true that if you go out and get the sun on your body, on your torso, and you sun yourself and sun your balls, you actually will get a grounding effect from the red light. Bear in mind that we're all exposed to blue light, which never used to exist. In our experience, blue light was extremely rare before the introduction of these technologies. And now we're all drowning in it. It causes depression and changes your mood and all of this kind of thing. And at the same time, you're getting these, strange energies from space. They can't really qualify or quantify what's going on, but it's impacting things like ham radio operators and people that like try and talk to submarines through technologies. They're all reacting to the energetic matrix of the planet having been altered.
Wow. Okay, there's a few questions in the chat about the financial system. Don't worry, guys. We're going to get there. We're not going to leave Cliff without asking him those questions. We have a few more here. So just on the nervous system, Cliff, how can having a better night's sleep also help you in these times here where we're dealing with all of these oncoming stresses on our body?
Well, you've got to get rid of the stress hormones. This is what happens when you sleep. So your body only repairs itself during sleep. When you get up in the day, if anything happens to you, you build up some kind of a hormonic response to it, inflammation if you jam your finger, that sort of thing. This only repairs itself when you sleep at night. And so the pure sleep stuff is designed to get rid of all of these negative problems during the day. And there's the stuff in there that produces allows your body to produce the maximum level of human growth hormone. So that alone, the human growth hormone, provides this ability to wake up in the morning not being hungover or anything. It's not like a drug. It gives you that snap like you were a kid again, not quite a kid, but a little bit younger, and it gives you a positive mood because your body's been repairing itself because it's got the human growth hormone. Because imagine this, if you damage yourself, you get an inflammation that seals up the broken finger right away so that you can't bend it and further damage. That's the triage of the body. Then you go through the whole day with this damage going on to the finger, and then you go to sleep at night. It starts repairing that right at night. If you don't have the material in your body to provide the human growth hormone to regulate the whole process, you wake up in a depleted state the next day because of that injury. And so if your body has the stuff it needs, it will then start repairing effectively. The rest of you will not be depleted as a result of, the jammed finger or the broken finger, that kind of thing.
Right.
Healing is really It's a very, very intricate and delicate process. And if you have all of this stuff in there, that's why I love Pure Sleep. When we're done here, I'm going to go have some, and then 18, 19 minutes after I get done with it, I'm out for the night.
I love the strawberry quick taste. Okay, folks, if you guys want to try that out, beyondmystic.net/shop. There you'll see the link to Clif High's Pure Sleep, and that is provided by Pure Bulk. Give that a try. You'll be better for it. Okay, Joe, you're next with the question. I believe it's on secrets revealed. How do you want to set that up for the audience?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're kind of seeing it now, just like the latest leak of the Pandora thing. And it's funny how it's called Pandora, almost like Pandora's box. Get ready, people.
Yeah.
And somebody had said online, it's a Soros op. It's a George Soros op. I think I tweeted and tagged you guys, but I was like, I didn't really have time to look at it. But I thought, well, I guess it could be, but maybe they're just using it to take your attention over here, or are there really big names? Because I'm seeing former prime ministers, and I don't know if Soros would do that, but I don't know, but
I wouldn't think he would. The secrets revealed is the most exciting part of all of this, because they've been lying to us for so long. The secrets are so deep and they go back so far. It's going to be great to know this stuff. Mm-hmm. The Pandora's box is just like, in my opinion, it's just like the Panama Papers. There was actually a lot of damage that came out as a result of the Panama Papers, and a lot of changes in how things were done in the financial arena. Now with this Pandora's box, it's showing how many of these people have been basically bribed by Soros or whoever. So I don't see Soros as being, you can say that, yeah, he's cagey enough that they might leak stuff out in order to burn a particular person, right? But would they burn all their friends in order to get this one individual? So it's awful hard to reconcile that as a motivation for it. But this part here, all of the secrets revealed, the break-in for the Vatican, ultimately the break-in in somewhere in Maryland, Delaware area, as we get into these food riots, it's going to be pretty fantastic. And also we're going to have those people that are going to get the secrets revealed by selling them, because they're working in the holes in the ground and they're not going to get paid here at the end of the month as all this stuff comes down. I mean, we're seeing it here too, by the way.
Who's beeping that?
That's not me.
Oh,
I don't know what happened.
I think that's yours.
Okay, keep going. Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right. But I would say we're seeing some of this stuff come out now in the interaction with the hospital and trying to get people in, and how the system is breaking down relative to the finances, because of the finances that's all under contracts between the hospital and the insurance companies. And the insurance companies gets a bill, but they only pay a certain fraction of it, et cetera, et cetera. And they're actually having supply shortages at a lot of the hospitals around here.
Yeah, and even I pass by all these power sports places, sell like 4-wheelers, ATVs, side-by-sides, and they always have the side-by-sides outside, the bad, fast ones, all this stuff lifted. And I go by there now, and it's some little jabroni bikes outside. I'm like, well, maybe it's just this one store. Maybe it's just this one Polaris dealer. And then I go to another city over here, Lakeland. Sometimes it's this great restaurant out there. So we drive by the other day, me and my wife, let's go over there and eat. And I hadn't been out there in a while. And I'm like, I've been here. My first side-by-side I bought from these guys. And they have a big inventory. So I go by there, and it's the same thing. I'm like, where the hell's all their shit? There's barely anything out here. So, it's like the supply line everywhere. There's an issue, with everything. Same with trailers. I was looking at whether it's an enclosed trailer, aluminum trailer, whatever. It's the same thing. RVs. There's a list a mile long for new RVs. But while we were talking about Pandora, I'm going, ding dong, Clif's number 888. But I just thought while you were talking, let me go to the message board that shall not be named, letter of the alphabet, and let me just do a search for the word Pandora.
Yeah.
So I find a certain post, 4888, October 18th, 2020. New York Post article, Hunter Biden reportedly also had business ties in Kazakhstan. Subpoena all of Hunter Biden's financial records, death blow, Pandora's political elite box. And then they had another post a few days later, another interesting number of mine, October 22nd, 22 of 2020. And they have a Fox News thing. Jim Hunter, it says Jim Hunter Biden China joint venture key domestic contacts for phase 1 target projects. Harris, Democrat, California. Well, that sounds like Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. I had a dream about him and Pelosi, about backs against the wall the other day. Amy Klobuchar, Dianne Feinstein, Senator Gillibrand, Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, whatever, among others. Again, political, Pandora's political elite box. Same phrase.
Yeah, and only a year delta, right?
Yes.
It was a year ago.
We're in October. So I'm like,
here's the thing. You know, that particular structure there has got a really intense time key. So it pays, and here's some things. Okay, so there's the Delta variant, which the use of the word, and where is the current newest construction on a courthouse for the Dot Mills going on, and what is the name of that camp?
On a certain Cuban area?
Correct, Camp Delta, right? Mm-hmm. And so what is Delta? Delta is the measurement of distance. And so we have this curious thing where there are deltas within the structure of that language that pertain to now, and it's a fuzzy set theoretic math that can be applied to it. So there's a whole lot of pronouncements with a 1, 2, 3 year delta that affect now. There are also laterally a bunch of 1 year deltas that are all interrelated that are showing up now. And so you can go horizontally or vertically to tie together structures of the language to remove further information if you want.
Wow.
It's just really is intense. I mean, it's like the best in cipher and code structuring without getting any kind of a software involved, at least in terms of decoding at our level.
Right. That's fascinating. Let me ask you a supplemental on Joe's question about secrets revealed. In one of your last interviews, you talked about this big unearthing that would come up sometime in October, and then you also tied in this idea of having this media casualty. And now Joe's talking about October 18 from this old post. Does that tie in with the time frame of what you're seeing also?
Yeah, I don't know about what the media casualty is going to be. That's reasonably more recent in terms of language. But the October is just going to be filled with the stuff. The unearthing may indeed be, it might be, for instance, the breaking into the Vatican, right? We could have that happen in October. We could have it happen that they break into this place in Delaware and bring up these secrets. All different kinds of stuff is coming out. We also have, coincidentally, our friends, I don't know if it's accidental or not, our friends getting that shape videoed, that on the truck, on the trailer, okay?
The ones that's too small for you and I to go fishing on another planet.
Correct. That thing is, that was no accident, okay? They don't allow accidents to occur about that kind of stuff. So it was deliberate that should be revealed now. And it may be deliberate because it's part of the SOC in its negotiations or threats against other players in what's going on, right? So things are so complex, I can't rule that out, but I'm certain that this was not an accidental reveal of a new kind of a technology. Those accidental reveals happened in the past, and then they clamped it down really, really hard. And ever since then, we've not really had anything that was accidental. When they brought out all of the stealth technology, it was intended that be brought out at that particular time, because that was part of the Reagan Star Wars initiative to force the Russians to spend money they didn't have and thus end up bankrupting their own currency as part of that deal. So all of this stuff's all interconnected. It's just a very complex world, guys.
Getting into complexity, Joe, let's get into here the death of the dollar. I did a series a couple of weeks ago entitled The Death of the Dollar. It had 10 or 12 great speakers come on the show. But ask your question here, Joe, and let's tie that in also with perhaps some of the remote viewers at Crypto Viewing and some of the things that they saw last year. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so death of the dollar just was another question about, I would say, how close are we? But obviously, I mean, we've got Evergrande, we've got the debt. So like feel like we're here. You know, we're knocking on the door now finally, and it's going to kind of unravel maybe over the next couple months. They bought, a little bit of time into December, but like I think you had said, doesn't really matter because there's all these, I don't know if it was bonds or just derivatives or whatever that are attached to certain things that doesn't really matter. It's going to negatively affect them now anyways. And then we have to deal with it in December. So whatever that's going to cause. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have much to add.
Well, there's a Honda dealership in my big town here that I go in for food, and it's just like your side-by-side dealers. It's got nothing. Okay, they used to have a whole acre of cars, and now they've got a thin line along one edge of the street, and so that's part of the death of the dollar sign. We can't. We've de-dollarized. People are not taking our dollars. They're not shipping us Hondas and all this kind of stuff. Now, true, there's all of this other stuff going on, but that's contributed to the death of our dollar, or to the dollar death issue here. It's going to be really hairy that way. So if we think about the ties in the financial system, the system itself, not the underlying wealth that theoretically is there, but the system itself, even if the wealth can be recovered, the death of the system will have its own problems in the sense of Social Security checks. Say that you had a situation where we didn't have Social Security checks for a couple of months, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, but then we started getting money and it started shipping again and that sort of thing. Even that is going to, that 6 months, it's going to have a hellacious impact. And that would be a systemic level of breakdown. Now, there's all different kinds of scenarios that could paint a much more rosy picture, but we don't have any evidence that any of those scenarios will manifest. And I think that we're going to have to go through a really horrific level of currency death. And if you want to read about this kind of stuff, then you go read about the death of the British Empire and what happens to the pound sterling and all of that, and the economic conditions at that time. Really, the thing to do is to get a community that will support you, and then to now you have to get materials, because we're in a supply shortage that is just, it's unique in my life. Okay, I've lived in supply shortages before. So I lived in Germany where we had to willingly give up things so that we could do the Berlin airlift. All right, so that we could get stuff to people in Berlin. We were the closest military bases. So we had to, as civilians, we had to give stuff up then such that the Berlin airlift, the second one there, could continue. And so we had shortages. And we always had shortages in, just as a military brat living on military bases in foreign lands, you don't have access to all of these goods. So I'm sort of used to it. But a whole lot of people will not recognize what's going on, and they will believe, or up until a short period from now, they will believe the powers that be that it's all temporary. It's really weird. They're stacking them up off, the ships are stacked up off the coast out here. But even if we get them, even if we had all those ships come into port, there's no trucks to haul. We can't offload these container ships because a lot of the container haul trucks are broken down and not able to be repaired. Mm-hmm. So it's a really interesting situation.
To add to what you were saying here too, at my local dealership, I was looking for a snowmobile to replace my old one, and the guys at the dealership, I went there to go see what they had in inventory, and there's almost nothing there. I'm like, what's going on? Did you guys open and move to another shop? And he says, well, here's the thing, Jean-Claude, if you want a snowmobile, you can put a $15,000 deposit now, and if and when we get them, we'll call you, and it depends on where you are on the list with your deposit as to whether or not you'll get one. So I'm like, wow, okay. So yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on there. Now, in terms
I had that with the tractor, though.
Go ahead.
My tractor had broken down. I was desperate because it was holding up my gen set getting in place, all of these different kinds of things here. And I'm really desperate with the gen set because we've got to cover medical issues with electricity and freezers, all of this kind of stuff, right? And we may lose power for a while. Anyway, but so I thought, okay, if I have to, I'll just buy a new tractor, because I was not going to be able to get a part to repair the tractor. And so I'd have to buy a new one just because of this. Couldn't get, a $120 part for my fuel pump, and so I was considering having to buy this new tractor. They they were empty. They didn't have any in their lot, and they were going to get one in, and it turned out to be like only about 5 times as large as my current one. So it would not have done. Couldn't have even turned the thing around really in my lot. But it's that bad that they had that one coming in. It was sold to a guy, and they had 2 other people that had put money down on it in case he decided not to come and pick it up.
I've been chasing a used backhoe for months, and every time I miss the auction because the price is higher, and then the week after higher, and then even higher. I'm like, it's almost the price of new to get an old stuff now. Around here, it's absolutely crazy. Okay,
let me read you this little thing real quick. This is from Dick Algire's recent October session. Of newsworthy events coming soon, and he draws a picture of what looks like the Capitol building again. I see another event, U.S. Capitol, not citizen. These would be lawmakers, reps, people on steps, assembly. They mill about. Reminds me of Death of the Dollar vision. Like reps walk out in protest, they assemble, angry, sad, fed up, discontent, argue. And that was it.
So he's saying that from October, and of course, this was the one that they produced last year on a blind target, which was revealed afterwards was a remote viewing of the death of the dollar. Guys, you can take a snapshot of that, but it appears that we're very close to that. Now, let me go back to the supplemental here, Cliff. In our last video here, the Silver Woo, you and I had decided to put this on BitChute for free for everyone. We couldn't put it here on YouTube. There was some of the language there that was a little bit touchy. But go to this question here. I keep hearing this in the last couple of weeks as I'm doing all of these shows. I see some of the normies in the chat saying, "Oh, JC, people have been saying this for years now since the Lehman. It's always going to end tomorrow, JC. The sky's falling and it never happens, and the government keeps kicking the can down the road. Don't worry, guys, everything's okay." And I'm like, maybe this time is different. So I asked Cliff and I asked David Morgan why this time was different. Cliff, can you repeat that for the audience here tonight? Why is this time absolutely different?
All currencies have a lifespan, and we're truly at the end of the lifespan of anything that we can call a dollar. That the dollar really began in 1913, but we've only used since 1971 a new form of that. This new form of that was electronic. They were able to do all of the damage that normally takes about 70 years. So lifespan of a currency is about 72 years, like a man, right? Some die at 50, some make it to maybe 100. But ours died in 1971 with Nixon. And from then on, they've done as much damage in 50 years as you normally see in 120 years to a currency. There's no purchasing power left in the petrodollar, and the rest of the world has abandoned it. So essentially, the financial system has collapsed. This accounts for the breaking down of the just-in-time system. This accounts for the breakdown of the interbank system between SWIFT and all these others, is that basically we've run to the end of the lifespan of the dollar. And we're going to have to do something different, whether we like it or not. This is it, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen it. I saw it happen to the French franc, where they had gone and they debased the currency of the French franc. And I saw the conversion in the 60s. So this was, so what they did was this, all right? So I hit Europe just as there was this big giant uproar because the French government mandated that all the old francs be withdrawn. Bear in mind, there was no digital currency to speak of. It was all physical paper. And France had a real problem because the French people don't like their government, so they didn't like paying taxes. So they do all their business and never report anything to the government. So the government decides to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The French had inflated their currency to where they had to do something. Usually this is a devaluation, and devaluations are funny because they don't happen the way that you think that they will, right? But in this devaluation, they also decided to get a handle on the tax issues. So they decided that what they would do would be a currency swap. Old francs for new francs, okay? And so in their minds, or what they were trying to do in the French person's mind, was to get them to understand that you had to give up 5 old francs to get 1 new franc. But the new franc is shiny, it's new, it has more spending value, it'll be worth more, so it's in your interest to do this, right? And so what they did was try to force out all of the hidden black market money out of the the mattresses by saying you have a deadline to do this. If you don't do this after a certain point, we won't allow the old francs to be used. And so all of France went into an uproar because they didn't want to disclose how much real money they had. They had to say where they got the money from in order to do the swap for 5 to 1. 5 to 1, it was like, oh my God, you know, give up a 20 and get back $4, this kind of thing. And so it's just a hellacious problem for the French people. There were riots, lots of people died. It went on for about 5 or 6 months. And that was isolated. And that was without all of the digital stuff. The digital stuff will just collapse. It'll just go instantly. There won't be any, go to the bank and get anything back. Once the digits go, the bank will essentially shut down. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go through one of these periods that's going to be like the combination of the Hunt brothers trying to corner silver, the collapse of the French franc, and the collapse of Algeria. When the French went through their currency collapse, they lost their colonies. It was that violent an upheaval. So I could see, for instance, Guam saying, we don't want to be associated with you guys anymore, or something along these lines, right? Probably not Guam because we've got too big of a military base there, but something along those lines. We could see some level of breakup because of the dollar destruction.
Yeah, and we're seeing already the digital, at least, disruptions here. I posted this the other day. We're seeing this like tens of millions of people around the world, my father including, having issues on Saturday morning. So yes, perhaps cash is king for a period of time here. You've mentioned this in quite a few of your videos. But just again, for those normies here, why is it different this time in terms of the powers that be's capability to kick the can down the road? What's changed now that is hampering that ability?
Okay, so the way in which they had worked their scheme was every time the currencies at a fiat level, which were all tied to the petrodollar, started getting wonky, they would introduce another layer of abstraction. Okay, so they introduced what we now call derivatives. Derivatives is a very wide, broad term, not because a bond is a derivative. Stock is really a derivative as well. But they introduced these strange, wacky derivatives and overlaid the petrodollar to keep it going through these last, since the Thatcher days, right? Because bear in mind, here's something. The petrodollar is tied to oil. So if oil is plentiful, we have inflation, so to speak, in the sense that you can have a lot of petrodollars. If oil isn't plentiful, you have a squeeze on your petrodollars. So at its core, that petrodollar is tied to oil. It was in a goofy way. Now we don't have that tie anymore. The petrodollar is dead. The Russians have their relationship now with Saudi Arabia. There is no longer the forced nature of having to deal with the dollar in order to buy oil. So the dollar is untethered from anything. So it's just out there hanging in the wind at the moment, not tied to anything. So because of all the other currencies that are tied to it, the whole financial system is basically screwed. This is what has prompted all this great reset talk, because they need to tie it to something else. So what they're trying to do is to tie it to the shampoo that Joe uses and the car he drives. And
Joe uses shampoo?
I know.
Just here and here.
So they're not going to get a lot of their bang for their new buck, right? So that's what they want to do, is they want to tie it to all of our personal stuff, our carbon footprints. Now, in between the Great Reset, when they have us tied into the carbon thing, they develop these stuff called SDRs, special drawing rights. Well, the special drawing rights were this layer of abstraction on top of all these other layers of abstraction, and they're not working. As we see that they're not working because they tried to prop up the Chinese bond system with the introduction of the SDRs directly to the CCP. And I think personally that triggered Evergrande. So that CCP was so close, or just the mere fact that they had to have this SDR delivery to them, which is basically like the international banks deciding to create a new super dollar and share it among the nations. And the idea is you'd get a giant platinum super dollar and you would cut it up and share it among your people, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was sort of like a super dollar for nations, these special drawing rights. We would not spend them. They weren't that kind of currency. And then there's the other issue. We're wising up. And so people are withdrawing currency out of the system. but we're withdrawing it out of the system in a way that shows the inflation. So Bitcoin's way up, silver is going to go way up. Trying to buy a new car is way up. A new snowmobile, you got to put down vast quantities of money now, et cetera, et cetera. These are all signs of the dollar death and its degradation as we're going on. But we're close to it. It's going to be just really strange. I could see that if we had the recovery of a political, or let me put it this way, it will take a political recovery within the United States in order for there to begin the process of a currency stabilization.
Okay.
An act of God.
An act of God. Yeah, and that perhaps that ties in with the 3 resets you were talking about also. Clif, man, there's a gazillion questions for you in the chat, and we're already long here, and I don't want to waste too much of your time, but I am going to get killed if I don't ask you at least about silver and a few crypto. So can we squeeze a few of those in, and then if you have time, we'll take some questions from the audience here.
Can I just add 2 quick things just so I'm like out of the way completely?
Okay, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
So you've probably heard recently, very recently, Trump, I'm filing a lawsuit in federal court to reinstate my Twitter account. He wants his specifically Twitter account back badly. Why? So the same message board I was just talking about with the Pandora thing. Let's think about this. Here's an early post. Look to Twitter. Exactly this. Quote, "My fellow Americans, the storm is upon us. ... Whatever." He can't do that if he doesn't have a Twitter account. And he's filing a lawsuit right now in federal court to get his Twitter account back. It's all planned. It's all timed. So I'm going to throw a stone or a dart here and go, I think he's getting his account back pretty quickly so that he can make that announcement.
Yeah.
Because I think we're getting really, really close. And then a weird thing happened as I was like just sitting here listening, waiting to talk. I had the image of the George Bush, Papa Bush funeral with Jeb Bush, freaking out when he read the card, looking at the casket go away. And the first time I think I might have ever heard this, when we all had our opinions and what really happened, what was on the card. And I just thought for a second, okay, we know that bastard didn't die right then. Cause remember they were pushing something big off to when that happened to stop it from happening. I forget what it was now. So it's like perfect timing. George Bush died. Oh, can't do that. That's got to be put on hold, blah, blah, blah. I just had this vision of like the note said something like, "Oh, don't worry, he's really in there." like we found his hiding spot. He's dead. We tried him, and he's in there. And that's why little Junior looked over at the casket as it was being hauled away, like, "Oh shit!" Fuck. Just a thought that came in out of nowhere. I have no idea why we're not even talking about that, but that popped in. I go, I think I just need to say that out loud for some reason.
Okay, I'll say one back at you. When you said that, the idea came to me was, if it was a real joke, I would have written in there, "Don't look around now, but one of you is next."
Yeah. Oh, shit. No. Or Hillary would have went.
What difference does it make, Hillary? What difference does it make? Of course. Okay, Clif, let me ask you about silver. In this interview, I asked you both about your temporal marker of the $600 silver that was in your Webbot data. In the same report where you talked about the $64,000 Bitcoin, we've already seen the $64,000 Bitcoin this year and the predicted retrenchment. So how close are we here perhaps to hitting that $600 silver now?
It could happen this month. It could happen extremely rapidly. The data sets in the description had said there would be $1 up a day, and then $2 up, and then $5, then go $20, and then off to the races. So basically, you would have like a 4-day knee before going exponential, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've been privy to some discussions by people that know what they're talking about as to various mechanisms that might be available to the Chinese to get out of their problem. Okay, so we're in a global fiat currency crises, all different kinds of fiat currencies, excepting the ruble. The ruble is stable, but the yuan is not, and the dollar is not. And this is going to crash, and it's going to be a giant currency flame out, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to try and repair it on the way down. Okay, so they're trying to patch this this pig with wings that's about ready to crash to see if they can get a little bit more lift out of it. some of the things they may do would, in one of the single things that they may do is this idea that has circulated that I find a lot of reason to give it credence, that the Chinese could do this weird little deal within their own currency because they have a two-tiered currency, right? They have an internal currency and then they have an external currency. Basically, they live on a credit system that's outside of their country, but their internal people don't have access to that credit system or this external currency. So the Chinese could manipulate the price of gold within their own currency and not technically affect the price of gold in dollars, right? It would still have an effect in dollars because they would basically come down to the point where they would create a situation where they would sell gold, they would offer gold at an extraordinary price, $10,000 an ounce. And then they would buy that gold at $10,000 an ounce with their external currencies, propping up the internal currency, so to speak, right? Because that internal currency would be the conduit for getting at this gold. So all of a sudden in China, gold would go from $2,000 to $10,000 or whatever dollar amount they set in their own currency, converted over to dollars. It would not necessarily instantly affect the price of gold outside of China. But you can see what would happen relative to an arbitrage that might be set up that way, right?
Right.
So there would be some level of ability to do that arbitrage. Now the Chinese would go one step further and they would not allow any form of digital arbitrage. So in order to gain that arbitrage, you would have to show up in China with that ounce of gold in your hand, which would create the situation that they need and would cause the situation that would cause silver to do just that kind of action very, very rapidly.
Wow, that's fascinating. Valerie Snyder in the chat, is it $600 an ounce for silver? Yes, Valerie, that's what we're talking about. And on top of that,
bear in mind, the silver isn't worth more. The dollar's worth a lot less.
Exactly. Oh, we'll get into crypto also here to explain why we're seeing the inflation in crypto in just a moment here in the last segment. So folks, if you're looking for the silver special that was available to the Beyond Mystic audience here for the Silver Woo show, that one, unfortunately, is sold out. Andy sold most of these in 2 days, and he told me that they sold 18 tons of silver that week. And this last week here, it's actually higher than that. So those guys haven't slept a bit, guys. But this special, I just asked Andy yesterday. He said this one they still have. So this is the Valcambi 1 kilo bar at $225 over spot. Absolutely amazing special. That was for the Beyond Crypto Woo September report. Let me bring that link down for you guys here as well if you're looking to get physical silver into your hands. Now, Clif, as we get into crypto, Joe, maybe you set that up a little bit here. Where we can spend 2 hours talking about crypto with Clif here. Perhaps we can talk about Veritasium. This is your story as well as how you changed your life from the Jabroni Joe to Enterprise Joe that you are today. We've talked about this story before on our channel. Maybe set that up a little bit there, and then we'll get into this conversation as to why we're fighting now, and we're starting to see this around the world, this introduction of CBDCs, where the government is going to try to regulate around some of these centralized coins to force us to use their central bank issued digital currencies. But let's start here very quickly with Veritasium.
Yeah, that was another thing the remote viewer saw about some little bit of FUD coming for October, and one of them being regulation, crypto regulation, possibly. So, yeah, Veritasium was one of these, altcoins. It was one of the earlier altcoins, and I've read it in a Clif High report. And it was after his Ripple report, XRP, where he said it was going to go from like a penny to like 20 cents or something. And then it did. I'm like, holy shit, I missed that one. I read it to you guys and I didn't even do it. I'm like, I'm not missing the next one, man. And so it was Veritasium. So I went, bought some Veritasium at $6. Within maybe 2 months, it was up over $100. I was looking at this house here that I'm at now, like, man, I could make the payments, but I didn't really have a big chunk of down payment. I might now. And then I sent a message to my wife within a week or two. They dropped the price twice of the house. It's $120 for Veritasium. I'm going, man, I put like $5,400 into this. I got $97,000 out of this. I go, Evelyn, you want to try this? I mean, they want me to put the money and leave it in the account for 60 days. So we'll just set the closing out, 90 days. And sure, done. It all worked right out perfectly. It was right around the same time where I had that little fight with the bank and they were going to foreclose. I was going to take the cash and, cash for key settlement kind of a thing.
Right.
They're not going to go after me for any deficiency. Like, we just want you to stop fighting. Okay. So we took the money, we ran, and they sell the loan off to another company who's now sending me letters. You owe us, you owe us. I go, no, settlement agreement. They should have never sold you that. They said they were going to foreclose. They just handed it off to you. So anyways, I waited. They did it again. I sent them a letter. They did it a third time. I go, that's it. Sent all the information to the credit rating agencies. They sent me a letter back. We got it. We're looking into it. Maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, we've looked into this. There's nothing on your report anyway, so we can't do anything. I'm like, what are you talking about? I took screenshots of everything. I go log into my account, clean as a whistle, high credit score, 700 something credit score, no history of a foreclosure. I go, not even the original one that's supposed to be on there? Nope, they wiped that too. I go, Evelyn, if this isn't a damn doorway opening to buy this house right now and take a chance, because if they come back, and it was Bank of America, if they come back and put that on there, I can't fight that because that's legit. I agreed to it.
Right.
They never came back.
Wow.
And I got the house, and the rest is history. Now the damn thing's paid off thanks to some crypto.
Okay, that's a great story, Joe. Cliff, talk about your introduction to this new form of money that you saw way back when in the report, how that came to manifest in 2008, 2009, and where you think all of this is going, specifically here, this war between the centralized and the decentralized coins here that we are about to face as we're trying to fix what is now broken before us.
So the data set started showing that there was going to be something wonky with the money in like the second big run, which would have been 1999. In that data set, I got the first hint that there was going to be the tech crash. So I sold the stocks that we had at that time. And I dithered around with it for a couple of weeks and then sold them. And my wife freaked out, right? Because I sold them, I think Microsoft at the time was like $111. That was the peak of the individual stock. I had like 44 of them, not very big stock holdings in any given thing, but it was our little nest egg, and I had a bunch of different kinds of stocks, so it was considerable overall. And it would have hurt to have lost it all, but I converted it all to cash and then started buying gold and silver with it because the data set said that we were going to hit this confluence of events that would cause the tech crash. And 2 weeks later, it reached its peak and then descended, and we had the big tech crash. After that, my wife said, "Oh, okay, all right, She never said you were correct.
You may be crazy, but you're not wrong."
Exactly. And okay, you don't have to buy them back. I could have at that time, but I wasn't interested in the stocks at that point because I realized it was not really people investing in sound fundamentals. It didn't work the way that it was advertised, blah, blah, blah. So I got off on other things and started buying, actually more equipment. I ended up buying all tons of computer equipment to support this new addiction with the WebBot stuff. But it showed me in 1999, it said that something was going to happen to the money and there was going to be a replacement, an organic kind of a replacement for the money coming out. And I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. And I didn't know what it looked at, what the data set, it wasn't named. So I used to have this convention within the data sets that I would have this empty bracket statement that would show up whenever the logic engine was reaching for an area that there were no words defined. So it didn't come back and say undefined, but it basically told me there's something that's going to show up that there is no definition for, but there's other data supporting it. And so I knew that there was going to be this new financial thing showing up. So I was looking for Bitcoin when it showed up. I wasn't actually looking through the gaming stuff, but for instance, there were a lot of games that used internal money that were operating before Bitcoin came out. And so I thought for maybe 2003, 4, and 5, maybe it's going to be a breakout of some kind of weird gaming money that would show up and be this new system, right? But then it sort of made sense, but never really. But anyway, and then along comes the white paper, and it's quite obvious. And except for the fact that my brother died that year, and my wife had a very negative experience with surgery, and had real recovery issues, and we had all kinds of stuff going on. I would have written software to mine Bitcoin, but I did not. So I waited, and then I came across some ability to get into it again in 2007 10 through 13 and started picking up from it on that. Now, bear in mind something here, though, guys, especially Joe, Veritasium existed from the time that Reggie saw Bitcoin. So Veritasium predates Ethereum and all of the smart contracts and stuff. And so I knew when I saw Reggie's work in 2017 I started looking at it in maybe March or April, but I knew about then that this was some solid thinking here. This was some really great stuff that had extremely long leg potential. And so in spite of the trouble that he's had with the existing government, I still say that government will later on come and use Reggie's distributed finance stuff to reconcile our existing system and withdraw the stuff from the old system. So in terms of, we got to get the wealth out of the old system as it dies. And we need to have this redistribution and all these kind of things.
And I asked you about the timing on that in our last interview, and you said, no. Things have to get a lot worse. Explain that to the audience here, what we're about to face here in the next couple of months before we get...
Well, no, this month. Okay. So we're facing hyperinflation of the dollar. We may be facing repudiation of American debt, which would crash whole industries like insurance industries, and this kind of thing would crash. People wouldn't go to work, that sort of thing. There's a potential that the government would maybe issue checks or maybe not, but it might be that it's moot because the hyperinflation would run so rapidly at a certain point, and we're very close to that point. So pretty soon, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, there will be some sort of a triggering event, and we'll have a hyperinflationary event within energy here in the United States. And it may be that we'll get these hyperinflationary events in the form, in not planned form of costing more money, but total unobtainium. Okay, so you can't obtain it. And so under those circumstances, what happens is that humans will go to get what they need. They'll go to other mechanisms. So if I can't get gas out of the local gas station because they don't have any, for instance, then maybe I'll go and I got to go somewhere or whatever. Maybe I'll go and buy gas from all these guys that have got a little bit sitting around for their lawnmowers. And maybe I'll end up paying $20 a gallon for the gas that way. And so we see the hyperinflation show up that way, kind of thing, right? So there's going to be these events. It'll be scattered and it's not going to be ubiquitous, but it's going to be really bizarre. No matter where you are, it's going to be quite odd. Mm-hmm. And I'm of the opinion that devolution is going to keep us safe through this process. And I see the hands of devolution everywhere. And part of devolution would be reestablishing a sound and stable, trustworthy government, in which case it might be that we have some weird arrangement between the military that's going to have to clean things up and a new civilian government that'll be operating at the same time that might be headed in an interim position by somebody that we know from our past, right? Without getting into it, right? But right. But during that period of time, all we need is a single linchpin of cultural stability to start building back a political stability, and then we can build back a financial stability. If we get to the point where we have this political stability that's robust enough, they may be able to correct many of our financial problems now, and I would expect that they would attempt to do so by claiming retribution from China, okay, from the CCP. Because the CCP attacked us with a bioweapon, because they have attacked our institutions, because they've bribed our courts and all of these kind of things, these are all acts of war. And in war, there's rules. In fact, there's a giant big damn book over here of all the rules of war, the law of war. And we know, because of the nature of circumstances now, that the CCP is operating with the globalist, and they're attacking all the populations of the planet through the bioweapon and stuff, and through the digital manipulation of the vote and all of these kind of things. So it's a coordinated attack on the populations. At the time that the populations win, by that war busting out into the open, all the normies getting the idea, then we can go back on China and say, you owe us. Now, the CCP will not fight us physically. We've known since the 90s that they know they would be forever defeated within their own country and would cease to exist should they ever get into a kinetic war with the West or the United States. And so they will pay the retribution. They won't like it. It'll be terrible for all of the people around the whole planet. It will cause the collapse of the CCP, though, just the way that the reparations that were demanded of Germany from World War I caused the collapse of that Weimar Republic. Mm-hmm. And so we will see this happen in China. We will see their government collapse as a result of them losing this war. And they'll lose the war, as I said, when all the normies, or when a sufficient mass of the normies wake up to the fact that we are at war. And then they'll change their behavior, and then everything goes very rapidly from there. It's really amazing. When you do software programming, you sit there and you crank away and you write code for months and you test and you iterate and you test and you iterate and so on. But there's another kind of software programming which you build this little tiny thing and you build it in a core. It's really nice. It's called a neural net. And you build it what's known as a neural iota or an atom or a neuron, various different names for them. But it's just a little chunk of code. It's really tight and it interacts with a database in a specific way. And then you make replicas of this thing and you provide impetus to it to diverge in how it processes your code. And once you do that, you can create, because it's just copying them, you can copy this code and alter it very, very, very rapidly and create tons of these guys. And then you can teach the software to know its tasks, as opposed to having to write the task in the code. And so it's kind of a toss-up in a general sense. But if you've got a lot of people that have to write a lot of code, you're better off doing a neural net, because you have fewer people, they write tighter code, and you just spend longer training the code. But once that code is trained, boom, it is so fast. The speeding process of being able to replicate it is just so fast. That's the kind of thing that would happen here if we get our ducks in a row relative to this recovery.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, Clif, I'm going to come back to you in a second here and ask you for your closing arguments and words of wisdom to empower humans here as we move through these difficult times. Before I do that, I want to ask you, Joe. Joe, in the last couple of years, you've been renowned out here for helping people get into crypto, set up their wallets, get their first exchange ready and all that. And in our WebBot reports way back when, we got to some reports that explained this idea that at some point in the time here, there would be a panic to own. And we're very close to that point now. Joe, so can you explain to the audience here how you can help them out at patreon.com/JSNIP4 before we go here tonight?
Yeah, I talk about my cryptos, what I'm doing in crypto, what coins I'm into, buy orders, sell orders, stuff like that, which hasn't changed much in recent times because I'm waiting on this little flash crash or mini crash. We've gotten close a couple times, but I have videos, a couple of like perfect for beginners, part 1, part 2, how to use Coinbase, how to open an Exodus wallet, how to use Mandela Exchange, send something out, do a trade, send it back. Sell it, on Coinbase, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Which is every newbie needs to know at least how to use Coinbase. You don't have to follow the rest of it, but I've got some videos. That center one, the JSNIP4's crypto woo-woo, that's the only one you need. It's $20 a month US. And if you're new and you want to look for those videos, just message me on there and go, hey, send me those crypto 101 videos. And there's 2 videos I'll send you right away.
Okay, perfect.
But I just want to mention real quick, someone had mentioned in the comment section that the vice premier in New South Wales had also resigned, like yesterday or the day before. So I went and looked it up. Sure enough, not only did they resign, that it's a dude, 2 other dudes resigned with him. So the big cheese, she resigned, 3 dudes under her resigned all Friday, I think. So
we're in for some fascinating times. Okay, so folks, that's patreon.com/JSNIP4, and Joe has quite a few videos there on how to get started. I know a lot of you keep emailing me. I don't have time for this. This is what JSNIP4 does best, so please go and check out JSNIP4. Now, for those of you who are looking for all of this WebBot data information that we've been talking about here tonight, Clif was so nice to provide for us here the zip files for the 2017 Alta reports, as well as the 2018 Bare Naked Wealth reports. Those are the ones you're looking for.
16, not 18. Right?
17 and 18, I believe, or
was
the
it?
2.
Oh.
years. And for the Bear Naked Wealth reports, guys, those are where you're going to see most of the data with respect to crypto. And there's a lot still there, very prescient today. And as we're looking at what's happening around us today, it'll give you some insights as to perhaps how to prepare here moving forward. So that's can be found now at beyondmystic.net/Clif High. Again,
on that background with the that you have there with us, me and Cliff.
Yeah.
Could you next time put my hands around his shoulders like I'm sniffing him from like a Joe Biden perspective?
Are you sniffing his hair? What are you doing, Joe? Do not look into those eyes. Okay. Okay, let me finish.
I refuse to be sniffed.
Okay, hold on, folks. Let me go back there. Okay, so both reports are there, guys, in the zip files. And of course, some people were trying to download these on the internet. Some of them have been copied, deleted, modified. These are directly from Clif, so you know that if you're downloading these, they are the original source files from the WebBot data. And while you're there, of course, this is all free for you guys. Please do consider subscribing to our newsletter here. Again, I'm trying to build this list in case we go down again on YouTube. Hopefully not. But if we do, we'll be able to contact you and let you know from where we will be broadcasting from moving forward. Okay, so let me bring that link down for you guys as well. So Clif, let's go back here to last words of wisdoms here to empower humanity moving forward so that they're not in fear, but in empowerment mode.
Yeah, we can, we're going to come through this, all right? I've seen some terrible, horrific things in my life, and we've actually, we're going through this with some people that are actively working to aid us, right? So Joe is correct. The things to do is to go and find Joe's stuff on cryptos and start taking your money out of the dollar as it dies. Don't pay so much attention, in my opinion, to Coinbase, although that's your conduit in, but also pay attention to what he has to say about these other exchanges, because at some point you're going to be dealing with cryptos to something else that won't be a dollar. All right. And that's where your real power is going to come in. They're going to try and proffer they're going to offer us three different financial systems that they're going to construct. And we're not ever going to deal with any of those. The people are going to reject them. And there will be an organic economy that arises on its own from that. And we're in this part right now where they're probably going to have something, maybe by December will be their first go round to say, okay, guys, we know we got a big problem here. Here's what we're going to do. And then everybody's going to say, no, you're full of shit. And we're going to go on to this other. So we won't use the central bank's version of distributed ledgers. We will use cryptos as all different kinds of vehicles. And also, I think that we'll ultimately tie them to gold and silver. But you're going to need cash and that kind of stuff to trade with initially as we start going. But we're not doing this. In my opinion, I see evidence that we're not doing this unaided, that there is a structure that we can call devolution. There is a plan for this. There's actual things within the plan that are predictable, and then they happen, so that we know that this plan is ongoing and people are doing things. And I see the evidence of this every day. So I am actually of the opinion that there will come a point relatively soon, maybe this month, after which we will be able to say, okay, if you were aware of this plan, you can see it too. You can actually see things happening right now, and you know that we're going to have a rough time, but that we're going to pull out of this and things will be a lot better because we're going to get these people off our back. You know, it'll be so nice not to have to deal with all of these authoritarians, you know, that think they know best for all of us, the bug mentality.
Yeah.
And once
I just watched a video. Democrat, I don't know if senator, whatever the hell he is, in his $750,000 yacht, and some people had went up to him. They said that the thing said they kayaked up to him, but I don't know if they kayaked or not. And you need to do this, and you know, you need to tax the rich. And he's like, "Oh, we're going to tax the rich." He's talking from his $750,000 yacht. We're going to tax the rich, and these morons are doing, yeah, we need to tax the good. Okay, well, what about this? Oh my God.
Clif, isn't there something in your WebBot data about somebody maybe being attacked on a yacht?
Yeah, that's one of these little temporal markers is that things are really breaking down, is that there's a a suggestion in the data that someone will go wonky from what's been done to them with the injection, realize that it's been done deliberately, and decide to go and take revenge, and will be successful in at least one case of taking out a well-known figure who happens to have a big yacht.
Mm.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Interesting. And when we end, stay for a second, Cliff. I've been waiting to show
Sure.
you something for a while.
Uh-oh.
JC's already seen it, but you can stay.
Okay, well, he's
I dare not ask, but okay, folks, let me end on this. If you guys are looking for silver again, that's the Beyond Crypto Woo Silver special from Andy Sheckman. Let me bring the link back down for you guys as well. And if you're interested in our latest Beyond Crypto Woo report with Janine, that is episode number 5 for September. It's available now. And there is also a coupon code available for you guys now. It is SAVE20. So we get into quite a bit of updates on forecasts on your favorite cryptos, as well as gold and silver, and the timing really matches up with a lot of the things that Clif High is saying. So if you haven't tried those yet, perhaps use this discount code here to get yourself started and familiarize yourself with the lingo and also the timing for all of this stuff. And of course, you can find Joe here at Realist News, on patreon.com at JSNIP4, and you can also find him on his YouTube here at JSNIP4 too. This is the second one. And please guys, go and subscribe to his backup channel. Of course, he just lost the last one. He was at 100,000 and still looking for his community there. So if you like this show and this content, we are simulcasting from his channel as well here tonight. Please do go and subscribe to Joe. And finally, last but not least, you can find Mr. Clif High at bitchute.com/Clif_High. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Un gros merci, Cliff. Un gros merci, Joe, for being here and having this amazing conversation. And thank you, everyone, for participating in this live chat. Live well, everyone, and live long and prosper. Okay. It's been a long night. All right, guys, I love you. Take care.
Double.